a lesson. You may have heard these words before, but I'll teach you what they really mean. Go beyond! Plus!
What is up, you guys? Plus hoster James here, coming at you with another video from Go Beyond Comics. So today, you guys, we'll be talking about the first issue of Transformers Shattered Glass. This comic flips the Transformers universe as you know it on its head. This new Shattered Glass reality features elements of the Transformers lore that we know, such as the war that raged from Cybertron to Earth, but here the war is between Decepticon laborers turned freedom fighters and the power-hungry Autobot autocrats. The story takes place many kilocycles after the blue planet was devastated and the Decepticons were brought to heal. This is crazy, you guys. So let's dive right into the issue. So the issue opens up on Cybertron following this Autobot named Blurr, who's a seeker or master body scrapper, which is basically another name for a bounty hunter. He lets us know right at the beginning of the issue that all the Decepticons that were a challenge were taken out by the master body scrappers, and there's nothing but stragglers left. He's heading to Gold City after completing this bounty, and we learn that Gold City is one of 3 territories here on Cybertron. We see the person you go to for bounties here in Gold City is Ratchet, who Blurr mentions is constantly trying and failing to build an unbeatable bot because he's suffering from trauma of Autobots who have died by his side. Like, yikes. You get to see why Blurr's name is Blurr is because he's the fastest Autobot, which I think is pretty cool. I don't think we've ever seen another Transformer do that. Blurr tells Ratchet how he hunted his last bounty and basically how it was boring for him. However, Ratchet tells him about a bounty that gets him really excited, coming from this person that we find out only that their name is Goldbug, ruler of Gold City. Now, the condition of this particular bounty is that it has to be brought in alive. And we find out that the bounty is Megatron's second in command and voice of the rebellion, none other than Starscream. The issue then takes us to Starscream being hunted down by these 2 Autobot master body scrappers, Chrome Dome and Hardhead. Blurr is watching the whole fight go down because he's measuring how good Starscream is. Hardhead and Chrome Dome think they have Starscream cornered, but then all of a sudden, Starscream pulls out these 2 giant blades, which is pretty damn cool. He takes out the blaster of one of them, but the other has them in their sights and they're about to take him out. But Blurr steps in and saves Starscream. Now we find out that Blurr could have ended this really whenever he wanted to, because Ratchet gave him a beacon that would have brought Goldbug and his men, but his reasoning for not using it is he didn't want to share the bounty with the other Autobots or risk Starscream escaping in the chaos. Both of them end up taking out Chrome Dome and Hardhead. They then leave Gold City and enter the static zone. There, Starscream stops Blurr and pulls his blaster out, pointing it at him. Now, instead of Blurr taking him out here, Blurr comes up with the idea that he'd rather have an epic story on how he took down a legendary Decepticon. His plan is to walk Starscream right into Goldbug's hands. But in order to do that, he needs to convince Starscream that he's on his side. Blurr tells Starscream that he needs the fastest Autobot on the planet, but also at the same time reminds Starscream that he really doesn't have many options. That this is where we get a little bit more details on the territories of Cybertron. First, we know Gold City has a bunch of body scrappers that want Starscream, that's ruled by Goldbug. Second is Prowl's territory, and all we get is that everyone is on the menu there. Third is the Pax territory, where apparently Optimus Prime rules. And finally, the static zone, where they currently are, where nothing apparently can survive because it's a dead wasteland with nothing but lightning storms and volcanoes. Active volcanoes at that. He continues to tell Starscream that only bounty hunters know all the safe routes, and that he's his only hope to survive. In order to push Starscream, though, even more into trusting him, he gives him a sob story about how he was a scout in the war and how he once believed in the Autobots were doing right. and that after the war there was nothing like bots for him to do, that they were couriers at first, but the couriers became too dark, and then eventually bounty hunters in order to move freely. That he really isn't an Autobot, but you really can't be neutral on Cybertron. Now initially Starscream still doesn't buy it, but Blurr says he just wants Pete's, and then he points out that if Goldbug is willing to go to all this trouble in order to catch him, then once the other warlords hear about it, they'll want him too. Starscream eventually accepts his help and believes him, it seems like. He tells Blurr where they're headed but not why. They go by Chrome Ridge, where Blurr actually came from in the beginning of this issue. Blurr says it's the deadest of the Deadlands in the static zone. We learn that the volcanoes here are what keep Optimus Prime from taking back Gold City, because it's too difficult to maneuver and it's not worth the bots he would lose. Just when Blurr think everything is going according to plan, Starscream strikes him, showing he truly wasn't fooled at all by Blurr. They battle and it's intense. They go back and forth as the volcanoes around them erupt. Starscream goes to strike Blurr, but Blurr outmaneuvers him easily. He's just simply too fast for him. He catches Starscream in his sights and blasts him, knocking his swords out of his hands. Blurr goes in for that finishing blow, but Starscream last minute flies up. Now this is where the genius of Starscream's plan comes into play. See, he knew Blurr was faster than him, so he took him to an area surrounded by volcanoes and battled him just until they erupted in order to use the magma to trap Blurr and submerge him. And that's how Blurr meets his end. Starscream stays, however, just to make sure Blurr is truly dead. We see Blurr's body encased in this molten rock, and Starscream is talking to him, saying that even though he really didn't mean it, Blurr kept his promise, and he helped him get one step closer to seeing Megatron. And that is the end of the issue, you guys. I like this issue, interested in seeing where the story goes. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. I would greatly appreciate it. Comment down below what you think of the issue. Was it cool? Was it like okay? Let me know in the comments down below. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Other than that, have an awesome day. Take care. And always remember every day to go beyond plus ultra. See you guys.